A cold, echoing corridor beneath the ruined Palatine Hill. Wind slips through cracked stone like a whisper from a civilization that once commanded the world. But beneath these ruins, buried farther than historians were ever meant to dig, lies a secret that Rome tried and failed to erase. A secret not about armies or emperors but about a scroll. A single scroll that spread faster than plague, traveled farther than legions, and rotted minds more effectively than any poison. It did not kill the Roman Empire, but many believed it weakened it, hollowed it, paved the way for its collapse. This is the forgotten story of the Roman Brainrot, the text that consumed attention, drained discipline, and turned once noble citizens into something unrecognizable. To understand how it began, we must return to the year 67 AD. Nero's Rome. A world of excess, spectacle, hunger for pleasure, and a public constantly demanding stimulation. Gladiator fights, plays, exotic animals, midnight feasts, endless festivals. But Rome didn't realize it had already crossed a line, because deep in the heart of this overstimulated empire, a single writer began to experiment with a new kind of entertainment. One that did not rely on spectacle but on addiction. His name was Cassius Aemilianus. Cassius, once a historian then a satirist and eventually something darker, believed Rome was becoming numb. Numb to violence. Numb to art. Numb to beauty. He believed the empire needed a new fire, a new form of narrative that hit faster, louder, and more intoxicating than anything written before. He wanted to create what he called libellus captiosus, the captivating book. Something that hijacked the mind. He experimented with rhythm, with shock, with abrupt twists, with cliffhanger after cliffhanger, with emotional spikes so frequent that readers never had a chance to think. He wrote in short bursts, quick, breathless phrases. Addictive patterns. Scenes designed not for meaning, but for dopamine. He combined gossip about senators, exaggerated rumors about gladiators, scandalous fiction about priestesses, absurd urban legends, and explicit descriptions of rituals that had never occurred. Like a chef of chaos, he mixed them into an intoxicating stew. When he finished, he had created a scroll unlike any in Roman history. The Reditus Obscura. The Scroll of Unending Return. It was called this because every section forced readers to loop back, reread, chase new meaning, and re-experience the emotional hits again and again. Cassius shared it with a handful of students. Within a week, it had spread to an entire district. Within a month to half the city. People stayed awake all night passing it around taverns, whispering its lines in bathhouses, reciting it dramatically on street corners. Families fought over who got to read it next. Some forgot to work. Some stopped attending temple. Some lost track of entire days. Merchants began selling unauthorized copies. Street performers dramatized scenes from it. Teenagers carved its phrases onto walls. Aristocrats purchased exclusive versions with gold leaf borders. The Senate tried to ban public readings of it. But the more authorities resisted, the more Rome indulged. By the summer of 68 AD, the scroll had become a kind of cultural fever. Senators accused it of polluting the youth. Philosophers warned that the scroll rewired attention, shortening it to a brittle thread. Teachers complained that students no longer focused on Virgil, Cicero, or Homer. They only repeated lines from the Reditus Obscura. Rome, they said, wasn't thinking anymore. It was only reacting. It wasn't contemplating. It was craving. A strange phenomenon emerged. Readers reported hearing the scroll's phrases echoing in their minds when they weren't reading. Some said they couldn't sleep. Others described a restless agitation, a constant hunger for something, anything, that felt like the scroll. People began demanding shorter plays. Faster gladiator battles. More shocking executions. More scandalous gossip. More stimulation. Always more. Cassius had created a population that could no longer sit with silence. The scroll had become Rome's first brain rot. But something even stranger, and far more dangerous, was about to happen. As demand surged, counterfeiters produced increasingly exaggerated versions. Versions filled with conspiracy theories about secret cults controlling the empire. Versions accusing specific senators of unholy rituals. Versions claiming the gods were planning Rome's destruction. Versions mocking generals, priests, and even the emperor. Reality blurred. Rumor became entertainment. Entertainment became belief. Belief became panic. Entire districts panicked over fictional predictions. People skipped work to hear the newest outrageous copy read aloud. Merchants created betting games over which plot twist the next version would reveal. The line between truth and spectacle dissolved. And with that dissolution, came chaos. In the winter of 69 AD, the infamous year of the four emperors, Rome tore itself apart with conspiracies, paranoia, and a population unable to distinguish fact from fiction. When Vespasian finally seized control, he ordered a citywide purge of destabilizing writings. The Reditus Obscura was placed at the top of the list. Soldiers marched door to door confiscating copies. Public bonfires burned day and night. Possession of the scroll became punishable by imprisonment. People hid their copies in walls, under floorboards, inside clay jars buried in gardens. But every time the scroll was suppressed, another version appeared. Like a hydra, cutting off one head only produced two more. A decade passed. Then another. Generations changed. Rome expanded, collapsed, rebuilt. But copies of the scroll persisted, mutated, fragmented, blended with new stories. By the time of Emperor Hadrian, scholars documented over 80 different versions circulating clandestinely across the empire. The scroll was no longer a book. It was a phenomenon. It infiltrated the military. Legionaries whispered its lines in camps at night. Merchants read it aloud during long voyages. Brothel workers memorized entire passages. Even slaves recited it during secret meetings, turning it into a form of resistance, entertainment, and escape. One philosopher wrote, "Rome has become a city of attentionless citizens. Minds erode like cliffs in storm tides." He blamed the scroll. Another wrote, "The brain of Rome decays not from famine nor from war, but from indulgence." During the 3rd century, a time of invasions, economic collapse, and constant internal conflict, many elites blamed the decline of discipline on Rome's appetite for addictive entertainment. Not gladiator games. Not wine. Not feasts. The scroll. They claimed Rome's citizens no longer thought clearly, no longer acted with virtue, no longer valued depth or patience. They sought only stimulation, quick, sharp, endless. Brainrot had become cultural. But the story does not end there. Because in 256 AD in the desert province of Cyrenaica, a Roman scribe named Tiberon discovered something extraordinary. A version of the scroll written not as a chaotic narrative, but as an instruction manual. A manual that detailed the psychological techniques Cassius had experimented with 2 centuries earlier. Techniques to capture attention. Techniques to disrupt reasoning. Techniques to hijack emotion. The scroll explained how to create writing that addicted the reader by overstimulating the mind. It described how to build narratives that bypassed logic and appealed directly to impulse. Tiberon realized something chilling. Cassius had not written a story. He had written a weapon. And Rome had been using it on itself for generations. Tiberon attempted to present his findings to the Senate, but his manuscript was seized. He was accused of destabilizing public order and exiled to Crete. Scholars believe he died there in obscurity. But his warning survived. Because he wrote a single line in his personal journal, found centuries later. If Rome falls, it will fall not from invasion, but from attention drained to emptiness. And as history shows, Rome did fall. Not all at once. Not in a single year. Not from a single enemy. But slowly, like a mind rotting from within. A society overstimulated. A culture drowning in distraction. An empire addicted to its own entertainments. Whether or not the Reditus Obscura caused this is still debated. But one thing is certain. Rome created something it could not control. And long after the empire crumbled, the scroll survived. In monastic libraries. In forgotten chests. In scattered collections of medieval scholars. Fragments appeared across Europe, Arabia, and North Africa. Every time it resurfaced, it triggered fascination and alarm. By the Renaissance, only a handful of scholars still knew of it. Mostly historians who recognized its influence on Roman psychology. In 1435, a Florentine monk studying Latin manuscripts wrote, "I have witnessed the book of the returning mind. As a serpent eats its tail, it devours the reader's peace." During the Enlightenment, it appeared again, this time as an artifact of curiosity. Philosophers debated whether humanity was still vulnerable to such mental capture. Some dismissed the idea. Others feared it. In the 19th century, a British archaeologist found a damaged copy in Egypt and concluded, this was the ancient world's first mind virus. But nothing compared to the discovery made in 1954, when an Italian excavation team uncovered a sealed chamber beneath the Palatine Hill. Inside lay a chest containing several nearly complete versions of the original scroll. The Reditus Obscura. The Roman Brainrot. Researchers who translated it described the text as hypnotic, chaotic, breathtakingly addictive. Some reported headaches, restlessness, and recurring phrases echoing in their minds long after leaving the laboratory. One linguist wrote in her private notes, "Cassius understood the human mind too well. His scroll is not history. It is prediction." The scroll was sealed again, stored in a Roman archive and restricted from public access. Not because it was cursed, but because it was effective. Even today, thousands of years later, the structure of Cassius's writing feels eerily familiar. Rapid twists, emotional spikes, endless cliffhangers, sensationalism, rumor disguised as revelation, overstimulation packaged as entertainment, fiction reshaped into addictive truth. The techniques Cassius used are the same techniques used in clickbait, addictive storytelling, sensational media, and the endless cycle of overstimulating content. The Roman brainrot never died. It simply evolved. The empire is gone. But the scroll lives on. In every story designed not to enlighten, but to consume. This is the legacy of the Reditus Obscura. The scroll that rotted minds and empires. And if Rome, mighty, disciplined, cultured Rome, could fall to it, what does that say about us? The story ends not in ruins, but in reflection. Because the ancient Romans didn't just invent brain rot. They documented exactly how it happens, and left behind a warning that the world ignored until now.